Hi there, I'm back once again for another episode of Enwisdomization. I am the Enwisdomizer. To enwisdomize is to make wiser, to make smarter, to elevate our minds, our intellect, our reasoning, our consciousness beyond the three-dimensional cognition. So be part of this Enwisdomization process. We talk about varieties of things. We talk about psychology, we talk about science, we talk about religion, we talk about anthropology, multiple things. That's what we deal with here. So I was reading this book by an Iranian American. His name is Cyrus A. Parser, the founder of AI organization. And this book swept me off my feet. Um, it's dense, it's deep. If I should borrow a religious concept, I would say that this writer is um, the prophet of the future because he sees what is coming to humanity, what is about to befall humanity. And he is sounding an alarm. He's sounding an alarm, he's warning humanity to be careful in the age that humanity is about to jump into. This age is the age of AI, artificial intelligence, artificial consciousness. You know, many people, when you think of AI, you just think of, man just created computer to help him. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Artificial intelligence is deeper than that. And if you want to understand, just get this book. It's not a big book. It's something you could finish in a couple of hours. Just less than 300 pages, but it's written in a way that is easy to digest and absorb the content. So I love smart people, and this guy is one of the smartest humans on this planet based on his research. Based on his research. And you could see that he invested time in finding out this frightening information and putting such information in a book form to warn humanity. This is the kind of book that intelligence agencies such as CIAs will probably have it as an operational manual. And that is why you have to grab a copy. Don't say, I don't have money. Grab a copy. You need to have a copy of this book before it goes out of circulation. What is coming in the future is frightening, and humanity does not know. Humanity does what humanity does. Ignorance and not hidden warnings from people like this, right? So I think he came up with other books. I have one other of his book, but I think the last one he wrote, I haven't read it yet, but I look forward to buying that one as well to read. So he was sounding alarm about China and about the Chinese stage in the development of AI or artificial intelligence and how China is pushing forward to use digital technology for the enslavement of mankind. Technology is not what we think it is. It is not what we assume that it is. Because Because when a lot of people think about technology, what do they think about? Something to help us to do our job, to make life easy. AI is a different category of technology. You are talking about a consciousness that is non-human, that is sentient, and that knows everything, possesses certain level of cosmic omnipotent, right? And the goal of AI is total enslavement of mankind. It will destroy some humans and the rest of humans to enslave them. And it will enter them, to possess them, right? And turn them into what? Cyborgs or cybernetic organisms, right? And will eliminate the soul imprint in humans, right? And replace them with artificial synthetic consciousness in this global hive mind system, right? So you got to read this book to understand what he's talking about. And he sounded alarm to Africans. And there's a place where he talked about how the Chinese leaders, the Chinese elite, how they perceive the Africans, how they talk about Africans in secret closed door meetings, that they see Africans as animals, as beasts, right? So this subtitle says China's socialist leadership calls Africans dumb apes in closed door discussion. I'm going to go and just read a few lines of, because that's what captured my attention, that we are used to Western racism. We are used to Western racism to some extent. We understand to some extent Western racial mindset, right? But I don't think we understand the Chinese racist mindset towards Black people as a whole. We don't get it because the Chinese people naturally are kind of soft and subliminal. But these people are bullets. They are determined, they're intelligent, they are highly disciplined to the core. And when they set their goal, there's nothing will prevent them from reaching that goal. And I'm afraid for Africa because the African continent has opened her door to the Chinese government with no moderation, right? And the Chinese government is coming back in the second wave of colonization. We know that during the 14th century, 15th century, Europe ventured into Africa and colonized, enslaved the masses of Africa, took millions of Africans away into what you call the New World to kickstart what you called the Western capitalism today, right? We understand that. We understand the Arab slave enslavement of Africans. We understand the Arab prejudice against the Africans or Black people. But that of the Chinese, we don't really get it that much. We don't understand it that much because if Arabs enslaved the Africans, if Western Europe and America enslaved Africans in the previous imperialist system, what happens with the Chinese now coming and invading everywhere in Africa? Why the Chinese enslavement will be so thorough is because of technology, the digitalization for the entire planet. Because the kind of technology they have now is the kind of technology that will read your mind, right? It will enter your mind and see what you're thinking. The masses of the people are being programmed every day through these social medias that we are all addicted to. There are AI algorithms that understands your thinking. You may not know that. The cell phone you have in your hand is synchronizing with your biological system. It is a consciousness that enters and penetrates your mind, your body, your nerves, your electrical systems, right? Your nervous systems, your neurological systems, the motor neurons, and all those electrical synapses in your brain is being studied by the cell phone in your hand. You don't see it, but if you switch off your phone, there is a digital field around you. And that digital field is befriending every cell in your body, understanding. And that is the future we are talking about. It's the future where people can decode your mind and crack the code of what you're thinking, and you don't even know that. And program you from the subliminal mind, right? And this is not science fiction. This is what is. So the fear is that because the Chinese government, communist government, and the Chinese people, with their discipline, with their determination, have um have um have advanced. When you talk of human advancement, they've advanced that Africans, for example, look like people in the stone primitive age, right? And that tells the reason where the Chinese people are calling Africans names, apes, right? I'm going to read um, just a few lines of what Cyrus Parser investigated and um, trying to let us know how the Chinese people or the Chinese government sees Africans. He said, through multiple private Chinese sources and recorded evidence, we received data that the Chinese communist leadership behind closed door conversations have been discussing their One Belt, One Road initiatives in Africa. Common themes heard in multiple settings were disclosed via recorded conversation with words such as dumb apes, dark monkeys, and really worthless Africans. That is deep. That is deep. If the Chinese government officials are using this kind of derogatory, demeaning, decondescending language to describe African people when they are talking official policy, government policy, that is very scary. That is very scary, and that is not something we should ignore. We shouldn't ignore that at all, because that kind of mindset dictates the official policy of government towards a whole continent. If they see you as dumb ape, they're coming for your enslavement. You don't know that. You don't know that. Because you Africans, most of your leaders have mortgaged your future, sold your future to these communist systems, and they don't understand it. They don't understand it. They think sometimes you see African leaders are very reactionary in their geopolitical, strategic, political disposition. They say, "Oh, the West did this to us a long time ago. Therefore, we're going to switch to the Chinese." And the Chinese is not a friend of yours. I went to some time ago my former university where I went to school for some kind of um, conference, like academic kind of presentations, and the Chinese kind of official was there, and a lot of people were asking questions to this Chinese official, like, why is China recolonizing Africa, right? And he says something that struck me to this day. People were asking, why is China not interested in the human rights in Africa? Why is China not doing this and doing that? He said, look, we are not friends to Africans. We're not friends to anyone. All we have is our interest. That is it. He was very blatant in saying that. We don't care about your human rights bullshit. We don't care about your environmental degradation. We care about only one thing, the Chinese interest. I mean, you don't blame them because I mean, every society, every political system fights for its survival and its self-perpetuation and sustenance. But anyway, so this is just kind of introduction. So I begin to think, to process what this concept, this idea that every race of people on the planet call Black people monkeys. You know, I begin to think about it, begin to try to understand why even Europeans used to call Africans black monkeys, right? Even in the United States, you know, up to this modern time, still people trying to give Black people banana, or making such gestures to just think that they are monkeys, right? And I found that one thing. I found that one thing that this actually has to do with reverse psychology, reverse psychology, and it has to do with the fact that Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, when you think of genetic interbreeding or mixing with the primates, right? That Africans don't have monkey gene in their DNA, but every other race on the planet have something they call Neanderthal DNA. Um, they carry Neanderthal genetics, right? So when they are calling you monkey, there is a repressed um, psychological drive to it because they are the ones who have Neanderthal genetics in their body. You don't. So why are they calling you what they are? Do you get it? So it's like the light bulb just um, went off. I was like, oh, yeah, I think I got it. I think I got it. This has to do with deep repressed fear of who I am, of my biological composition, of who my ancestors are. And because of that, I'm afraid of who I am. Then I'm projecting. It's called projection in psychology. It's a defined mechanism for people who understand psychology or psychoanalytics, psychoanalysis. You know, when something you dread, something inside you within your own subconscious mind that you dread, that you fear, you project it and then accuse other people of the same thing inside you that you are scared of. It's called projection and psychoanalytic theory, right? So let me share my screen because I'm going to go into the history of scientific racism and how in the European academia, academic history, Black people have been perpetually put down by prestigious academic institutions calling them ape or stating that they have this close proximity to apes. But now, thank God to molecular biology and the studies in genetics that have categorically and clearly stated that Africans don't have monkey blood. you know, that it is every other race except Africans have Neanderthal gene. You get it? So I'm going to explain few, like kind of summarize the few history of this racism, because this racism is ingrained in the psychology of both Western and now seen from the the Eastern society as well. That these leaders of these nations have this pathological hatred for Black people, right? Pathological hatred for Black people for some reason. And as I said, we, at least to some extent, have an insight window into Anglo European racism. We understand the history of Arab racism, but we have not really understood the mind of the Chinese. That is why, if you're an African, be a researcher. Be a researcher, because researching will help you to live, to be alive tomorrow. Knowing how the world works will help you to be alive tomorrow, will help your family to survive, your children to survive, as well as your continent as a whole to survive, you know? So I'm going to share my little screen here, and I will try as much as possible to make this not last that long, okay? This is going to be our topic: Chinese African racism, an extension of Euro-American racism, right? Go back. Okay, so is China learning from the Western world? Did China learn her racism, her imperialism and exploitation from the Western society? Perhaps, perhaps, because as I said, in the 14th century, Europeans start making inroad into Africa, begin to exploit the African continent, and not just exploiting resources, but also human resources. It was African slavery that built the Western world. That is what they don't want to acknowledge. African, how many millions of people? Do you know how much one slave is worth? One slave, in terms of the productivity, in terms of the contribution that that slave gives to the master and gives to the general economic infrastructure, right? So now Arabs and the West came to Africa and enslaved, they pilfered, they pillaged, they raped, they vandalized, they conquered. And not just that they conquered the Africans, but physically and militarily or economically. They also conquered the minds of the Africans. And we are still suffering the impact of that conquest up to today. We are still suffering the impact of that conquest up to today. And one of the reasons, of course, they continue to see you Africans as dumb apes and monkeys is because you don't have your mind is invaded by parasite. There's a parasite in your consciousness, and you have to root out that parasite. That parasite, as I always say, is religion. You are addicted to religion. You are addicted to Christianity and Islam. And these are foreign ideologies. This is not you, but they've convinced you that is the way, and you've bought into it. Remember, you are subject, you are susceptible, you are suggestible to whoever conquers you. If you live in the northern part of Africa, for example, and you're conquered by Islam, you will follow Islam. If you live in some southern part of Africa and you're conquered by the Christian imperialism and religion, you follow Christianity. So these are accidents of history that you've internalized and assumed to be true. And you see Africans who claim, oh, we're theologians. And not theologians, you don't understand your own theological construct, your own ancestral theological construct. But you can replicate and internalize all Western or Arabic literatures and forms of religion, you know? So something is wrong with it. Something is wrong. And it is deep. The virus is deep. The infestation within our consciousness is very deep. And there's no way you are going to know who you are. Remember, civilization, building civilization comes by what? Knowing who you are. You cannot build, you cannot develop when foreign consciousness lives in you, right? Because if you study the history of ancient wars and conquest, there's something very common in most of these conquests. What is that? Whenever one race of people or a nation conquers the other, what do they do? One of the first things to do is to destroy their idea of God, their temple. Think about it. That is one of the first things they do, to destroy the cohesive idea of their spirituality, and then they will give them a foreign one, a new one. Why is that? Is consistent in history, very consistent in history. Even when you read the Bible, you see that when Emperor Titus conquered Jerusalem in 70 AD, what did he do? Destroy the temple. He destroyed the temple because your spiritual cohesion is your existence. Your spiritual, your ancestral, original, indigenous spirituality is you, is your essence. And if they replace it, it means that is foreign consciousness is living in you. It means that you are going to follow the dictates, the mindsets, the ideologies of those people who conquered you. Why wouldn't they call you apes and monkeys? Tell me, why wouldn't they call you Africans apes and monkeys? Do you know how hard it is for the Western society? The West has been trying to, quote unquote, evangelize China for a long time and replace their religion. They don't give you that access. They don't give you that access. They retain their, I think they are Buddhist also, very rigid. The same thing with Japanese, Shintoism. It's difficult for you to just go and say, I'm evangelizing you, because they understand something you Africans don't understand. That once your spirituality is taken, it means your soul is gone. And if your soul is gone, somebody can control you, become like what? Empty vessel. Somebody can put any kind of idea into you and you believe it to be real and to be, quote unquote, eternal truth. Did you even know, African, that your genetic is older than most of other races, right? Because according to the Australian Center for the Study of Ancient DNA, this is top-notch European academic institution. They say the DNA or the genetic makeup of modern Europeans is not that old. It's not that old. So you have been existing here before some of these guys came to the planet Earth, and then they're the ones who are teaching you about God. Because you've lost who you are, you lost your original. And if you lost your identity, if you lost your name, what happens? Somebody can give you a new name and you begin to answer that name. That is why we have to, as a people, begin to go back to the roots. You see a lot of people who claim to be educated, PhD, master's degree, but all of them have the consciousness of a very, this alien parasite is living in them. I've seen like brilliant Africans who claim to be Quranic scholars, right? And they're brilliant, they're genius, but they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong place. I've seen theologians, Christian theologians, highly learned, who are Africans, but again, there is a parasite, a foreign consciousness living within their mind. And we have to uproot it. We have to uproot it. It seems like we're afraid. We're afraid because they've convinced us, because whoever colonized religion will convince you that if you don't follow that God, you're damned forever. And you accept it. You accept it. You're scared. It's a hypnosis. Get get away from those sort of indoctrinations, you know. So that is the problem. They see you as apes and monkeys and gorillas and chimpanzees because they know that your soul has been, um, your identity has been taken away. You don't know who you are. And I say it is difficult for Westerners, and the Westerners have been trying for a long time to use religion to conquer um, the Chinese people. Because once you penetrate them with religion, you conquer them. You conquer them, right? You divide them. They don't want to give you that opportunity. They don't, right? So this is the book I was talking about, and it's highly recommended for any African, for any humans, anyway, any humans on this planet who um, is not on the negative side, who is not on the dark side, who is working for the soul freedom of people, need to read this book, right? By Cyrus Parser. Look at this guy, is brilliant. It's brilliant, very brilliant. So now the Chinese government officials are not just calling Africans apes and monkeys in their museums. You know, museums is something that the country brag about. In their museums, they depict Africans side by side. They put Africans side by side with monkeys to be viewed by the Chinese population. Do you understand what this means? Do you understand what this means? That's how they see you. Doesn't matter if you have PhD. It doesn't matter if you're going to school or have 50 master's degrees, as some of you Africans like titles. Titles with no research, right? Doesn't matter. That's how they see you, as monkey. Subliminal suggestion. They are coding the minds of their people, of children who go to museum and see Africans put in a museum, compare with dark melanated black man side by side with monkey, and they tell them that, you know, Africans are monkeys. When you go there, they live in trees and they're monkeys. And these children, you know, they are teaching them to be very brilliant. They are coming with this brilliancy to recolonize you again. That's how they will treat you as an animal. You get that? And your leaders don't care because they see your leaders as apes and monkeys too. That's how they see them. So this is an abomination. This is an outrage to any African who understand really what is going on. This shouldn't be. So, and as I said, I'm going to explain as we go on the reason why they, everywhere you go as Africans, they treat you like a monkey. They call you monkey. They call you all kinds of these horrible names. Because they know that they are the ones who have monkey blood in their system. You don't. So it's more of a reverse psychology they are playing on you. Their scientists knows that Africans are the one who don't have Neanderthal DNA in their genetic makeup. We were not interbreeding with Neanderthals. Could you imagine what would have happened if all these Western scholars and institutions have found out that Africans were interbreeding with Neanderthals? Oh my goodness, that would have been like a self-fulfilling prophecy to them. Like we said it. The reason why you culturally, morally, genetically, and physically inferior is because we are interbreeding with monkeys. You're fucking monkeys and having babies with monkeys. That's how they put it. Right? So we have to be aware of what is going on because this has to be with our survival. When they start comparing you with animals, their human sympathy is not, because for you to subject a people to the level of oppression means you have to create mass conscientization. You begin to use subliminal suggestions. You begin to play psychology on the masses to kind of destroy any human sympathy you have with them. You call them animals. They are animals. They're animals. Black people are animals. I saw them in a zoo, I saw them in a zoo, they're animals. So they don't have human sympathy to you because you're not human. For them, you're not human. But actually, you are the true human. You are the original human. And they know that. That's why I say they're playing the mind game on you. So when they call you monkeys, because they have monkey genetics, that's why. They know you are not the monkey. The elites know that. So when the Chinese officials and intelligentsia gather together and begin to refer to African, are you telling me they don't see all these studies that are saying that every other person outside except Africans have monkey DNA? Of course they know. They know you are not monkey, right? So the Chinese multi-billion-dollar economic activities in Africa is designed to enslave the continent. And they are enslaving the continent since they are now seeing Africans as dumb apes, right? Very soon, they're going to make Chinese studies, Chinese language mandatory in your language, in your countries. Your leaders don't. This. I'm wondering, like, your leaders are blind. Your leaders are blind. They don't get it. They don't get it, and I'm afraid because by the time this beautiful continent realize what is going on, they've gone into the second stage, second wave of slavery outside the Arab and then the West. You're going to go into the third um, slavery by the Chinese economic system. The world is competition, and you have to try to outsmart your opponent. You have to defend your land. That's what makes you a human. Survival instinct is the basic instinct in every living organism, right? Even animals and plants. If you put a plant in a dark room and open a tiny hole on the roof where sunlight is coming, you see that plant will start growing towards that line because trying to survive. And are you the only people as a collective consciousness, as a collective group of people who don't really care about your existence and survival? You give your soul away easily. You allow anyone to rape you, right? So this is the exact about using the word ape, calling African monkeys. This is the exact theory utilized by Western and Arab racist imperialists to conquer and subjugate Africans for centuries. When they came, what did they call you? Apes. And you have to understand, it's not just the Chinese officials, even the Western, you don't just know that. The Western elites also use this concept, this idea that Africans are backward barbarian apes. Not just they're backward, but they're apes, they're monkeys, literally monkeys. Ronald Reagan, in a conversation with President Nixon, at the time, I think 1971, when he was still the governor of California, used the same thing to describe Black Africans. He said they are monkeys. That is Reagan. They are monkeys. Blacks are monkeys, right? But as I said, they're playing reverse psychology on you because if you know the game, you know that you don't have Neanderthal DNA in your genetics, in your blood, right? It's a pure reverse psychology. Don't buy that garbage. And I'm going to teach you the scientific way to defeat some of these racist um, statements you receive all over the world wherever you go. People call you monkeys, black monkeys. No, you tell them you don't have Neanderthal DNA, right? And I'm not making this up. This is pure science. So as I said, it's more of a, anyone who understands psychoanalysis, there's a self-defense mechanism called projection. That is a human subconscious defense mechanism. When somebody is feeling something about themselves, they're reflecting something about themselves that they hate, they project it outside. It's a way of dealing with reality in a healthy way. When they call you monkeys, know that they actually talking about themselves. Look at this um, image I put here. This guy is pointing at these black people and saying, black people are dumb apes. But in his mind, his subconsciousness, this is what he's telling himself, the truth. I don't want to admit it, but I'm the one who carry Neanderthal DNA, right? Even though he's saying, oh, black people, you guys are the monkeys. But he knows that black people don't have Neanderthal gene in their body, right? So this guy is one of my favorite author. I think he wrote by this. He wrote, this is not his original name, but that, if you want his book is all over the place. Even though they're old book, but he's brilliant. I have one of his book here. Doesn't have the back is falling off, but oh my goodness, this guy is genius. Genius. At a time of darkness, there's people who still have light. The time when racism was very prevalent in the academic cycle, this guy was like a beacon of light because of the way his intellect constructed the argument of racists who are trying to make black people feel bad by calling them apes. So this book, if you see this book, it's an old book, so I think it's cheap now. So if you can find it, it might be cheap. So trying to give up scholarly materials for people who like to research, and there's need to research because that is your survival. You have to know how people think. Knowing how people think will help you to survive. When my dad was teaching me how to drive motorcycle, I think I was probably about 14 years. Then he told me, like, you have to drive your own, but you also have to drive other people's own. You have to predict what they're going to do next, right? So I think that's a very good advice. So if you want to know survive, it means you have to know how people think, other people think. If you only know about yourself, how you think, it's called naivety, because now you will not be equipped to defend yourself when you have to, because you think the world is just centered around you. So you have to be the master of your environment and be able to read people, be able to read culture, be able to read what people are thinking about you. So get this book. I like this guy so much because he is not a racist. Not every white people are racist. No, I don't. Not at all. Some have good souls, and some actually fought for black people more than black people fought for themselves. You know. So his name is Ashley Montego, whatever. Yeah. He died in 2019. So when he wrote this book, he made an argument that, let me just read it. It's funny. It's very sarcastic. His book is very brilliant. He's a genius, but he's very sarcastic in his argument. He was a British anthropologist known for debunking the myth of white supremacy and black inferiority, right? He wrote, the Negro is from the evolutionary standpoint more advanced than the white. That is, if we take as our criterion of advancement the fact of being farthest removed from the condition as are exhibited by the existing anthropoid apes, such as the gorilla and the chimpanzee. If some of our racists would take the trouble to visit their local zoo and for a moment would drop their air of superiority and take a dispassionate look at either one of these apes, they would find that the hair of these creatures is lank, that their lips are thin, and that their bodies are profusely covered with hair. In these characters, the white man stands nearer to the ape than the Negro. I think what he was trying to say that, and this is true, this is not, we're not trying to be racist here. I'm not talking like the polarity between black and white. I think I have my own theory. I think there's a there's there's war going on that we don't see, interdimensional war. I think humanity is being manipulated by a certain extraterrestrial um, extraterrestrial if you like aliens to pinch one race against another and to create this battle back and forth because skin color is the least to capitalize on when you look at people, right? But this, well, let me not drift. So this guy is one of my favorites. I like him. I like him. This is another of his book. I think I have a copy of this book as well. Frontiers of Anthropology. You know, buy these books and read. Buy these books and read. Study. Whether you're a boy, a girl, a man, a woman, study, read. That's how we're going to understand as Africans how other people think and what they think about you. Because if you don't know what they think about you, that's why you produce leaders who are just blind and don't know how other people perceive them. African leaders go and shake hands with Chinese communist leaders, not knowing that once they leave, they say, oh, these apes, we're going to conquer their whole country. They're monkeys and apes. And if you know how they think, you also have a strategy. You also develop your people to be able to defend your future, right? They don't get it, right? So, coming to my main topic today, there is a research done by this institute, Max Planck Institute. I think it's in Germany. Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. Anthropology has to do with the study of man, ancient man, their culture, physical compositions, some things like that. The study of man, you see. So they concluded this institution is one of the best in the world, right? One of the best. And their investigation concludes that every other person except the Africans have monkey genetic in their DNA, right? And I'm just going to read a portion of this place I highlighted. It said, ancient DNA from Neanderthal. Neanderthal is kind of a primate, right? Although even though it is an advanced primate, but it's still monkey. Monkey is monkey, right? Ancient DNA from Neanderthals and early modern humans has recently shown that the groups likely interbreed, talking of humans, not Africans, humans interbreeding with monkeys. And that's how they get their gene in their body, right? Okay. Ancient DNA from Neanderthals and early modern humans has recently shown that the groups likely interbreed somewhere in the Near East after modern humans left Africa some 50,000 years ago. And listen to this. As a result of interbreeding between people and monkey, interbreeding is like copulating, having sex, right, with Neanderthals, right? As a result of this interbreeding, all people outside Africa carry around 2% to 3% Neanderthal DNA. So you see the point. I'm going to read it again. You see, as a result of the interbreeding of Euro-Asians, Europeans and Asians, right? All people except Africans, black people, except black people, carry around 2%, 2-3% of Neanderthal DNA. So do you see why what I'm saying, that when they accuse you of being a monkey, is because they know that they have the DNA of Neanderthal. Are you getting it? It's called projection in psychoanalytic principle. It's a defense mechanism. They don't like what they see in themselves. They don't like that they have this DNA of monkey. Therefore, they say you are the one who have it, but they know you don't have it. You know, although they say interbreeding, but I have my own theory as to how humanity has, some people, humans, came to possess Neanderthal DNA in their system, right? And for some of you who are Bible-believing, tongue-speaking, church-going, some of you cannot explain to me how monkey blood ended in people. Explain to me. Ask your pastor this question. Your pastor like to preach and shout, and how come, because you think everybody's everybody, how come monkey DNA is in humans? Monkey. We are told by these academic institutions that they were interbreeding. But that is the mainstream thinking. That is the mainstream theory, right? That is the mainstream. Because there are different creations and what you may call genetic engineering that went on. Probably the what you guys think to be creation in the Garden of Eden was a sort of genetic engineering that went on the Garden of Eden, if there is any such creation. But the point is that don't accept anyone to put you down, tell you that you're monkey and give you bananas and do all this bullshit. You don't have monkey blood. You don't have monkey DNA. You don't. As a black person, doesn't matter how dark, you can be as dark as night. You don't have it because you are the original human, right? You're the original human. That's why a lot of people, some of these racists, not white people, don't hate white people, not at all. Don't do that. But that's why some racist people don't, because they know this truth. You don't. They just give you the Bible, you read, and you become like a child, right? Become like you don't have a brain, you can't think. That's it. So this is what Neanderthals look like. You know, they are now extinct. And suddenly, once they say modern humans left Africa, went to Eurasia or the Middle East, begin to interbreed with these Neanderthals, then after a while, boom, Neanderthals disappears. So we don't have them anymore. You know, they disappeared. But these are some the way they might have looked. So they're kind of humanoid, but not really human. They're still monkeys, right? They're still monkey. But from what scientists and geneticists are telling us, that humans could actually interbreed with these creatures, right? But not you Africans, not you. So don't let anyone use science to defeat some of these racist ass people, right? Use science. When they call you monkey, tell them you don't have Neanderthal DNA. Your blood does not exist there, right? Okay. So Neanderthals or Homo neanderthalensis or Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, these are extinct species of hominids that inhabited Eurasia. These creatures were not in Africa, they were in Eurasia. Eurasia just means Europe and Asia, right? hundreds of thousands of years ago. And this is what the reason 2 to 3% of all humanity, all human beings except Africans have this, because they were interbreeding with, from what we are told by these high-ranking scientists and geneticists, they were interbreeding with these creatures, right? Again, this scholar, I have his book. If you can buy this book, go and get this book and study. If you're in Africa, got to read, got to learn to read. Most of you will finish school, you think you're educated, you never study one book. Remember, school does not educate you, they indoctrinate you. So you educate yourself. So when you get out of school, what you do, you go to school to maybe get a job. That's it. Not to be educated. Because most of you think by speaking English, you're educated. You finish school, you never read one single book, one single research. One. How are you going to grow? Come on. Come down from that mountain of ignorance that you are in, and you're thinking that you can see the world. No. So buy this book and read. This guy is one of the big names in research when it comes to anthropology and genetics, right? One of the best. Svante Pääbo. He was a Swedish scientist, geneticist, and evolutionary anthropologist. He is a world-renowned scholar in the science of evolutionary genetics. Pääbo has been called one of the fathers of paleogenetic, who has worked extensively on the Neanderthal genome. That's his expertise. You know, he has concluded that Europeans and Asians carry DNA of Neanderthals and not Africans. You get it? So I'm going to ask you again, why do they keep making fun of you that you're a monkey? Because of your black skin? And in this book, I showed you this book earlier by Ashley Montague. He said that actually, when they call black people monkey, if you shave like chimpanzee, their skin is actually not black, it's white. You know, so he's trying to say that if there is anyone, even when he wrote this evidence of genetic has not come out yet, but he was using just his normal anthropological observation to make his conclusion that even though you'd say that black people are monkeys, but look at chimpanzee and their lips, black people have big lips, blown lips. If you look at chimpanzee and other monkeys, they have very tiny lips. And I didn't say that. That's what a European scholar himself is saying. You know, it's not some crazy Afrocentric. He's saying if you compare the lips of white people and or Asians and the chimpanzee, they resemble, they have more closer proximity compared to black people. And even if you shave the hair off some of these apes, their body is actually white and not black. He wrote this before this revolutionary genetic science, molecular biology was used to in these revolutionary findings. So get this book as much as you can. Get it. Don't say you don't have money. Don't just say you don't have money. Nobody has money, right? Get it and try to study to understand the world, right? Another researcher, this woman, a PhD, again, her finding concludes that Europeans have intermixed and Asians intermixed with Neanderthal, not black people, right? Find this research called the Baku Cairo Studies and study it and see what top European academicians are saying, right? Again, the research was all over the place, because they can't hide it anymore, They can't hide it anymore. In the Nature, this is one of the popular science journals. You see what they wrote here? They said, confirming that the first European modern humans mixed with Neanderthals and suggesting that such mix could have been common. See, everybody's saying it. Everybody's saying it. Humans dispersed out of Africa and then went to Eurasia. And from there, they encountered primitive Neanderthals and begin to intermix with them, interbreeding with them, and now they have they're positive for Neanderthal DNA, right? So again, even BBC, BBC, BBC is a mouthpiece of the British intelligence. You know, now like they're colonizing Africa all over the world. You see BBC television all over Africa, not knowing that these are the British M16 is the mouthpiece of the cultural mind conditioning of the British government across the world, just like the VOA or the Voice of America, run by the State Department, you know. So again, the BBC said, carried the news as well. Previous work has shown our ancestors, not our ancestors Africans. So when they say ancestors, just keep yourself away from it because you're not part of it. Talking of Europe and Asian people. He said, previous work has shown our ancestors had interbreed with Neanderthals 55,000 years ago, possibly in the Middle East, right? They're saying the same thing. The new results reveal there were additional mixing once modern humans pushed north into Europe. So there are like batch by batch mixing, different segments of depending on the timeline. So between 6% and 9% of the, I can't say this word, OC individual's genome is from Neanderthals, an unprecedented amount. By comparison, present-day Europeans have between 2 to 4% Neanderthals. So why are some racist white people keep saying that black people are monkey? You see that what I'm saying? They are the ones who have monkey DNA. So you got to understand that a game is being played on your mind and don't accept that bullshit. Don't accept that bullshit. You don't have it. You're not a monkey. If there is anything, any fully human beings, you, Black Africans, right? This is not to create a racial disparity, but we're just tired of everybody thinking that Black people are just monkeys. They're making fun of you. You see some African footballers playing in the some of the best European what do you call it? European teams, and the Europeans are throwing bananas to these Africans, thinking that because they're making fun of them that they're monkeys. No, you see, it is it's a repressed program playing in their mind, repressed subconscious psychoanalytic principle playing in their mind because they are telling you what they dread about themselves. Because if you go and check their gene, there's a monkey DNA there, and they say it is you because of your color, right? But science has been used to justify that you don't have any genetic interbreeding with monkeys, right? So what happened? We have to understand how the world, because if we go by something called the monogenetic theory of human origin and spread, we see that humanity originated in the East Africa. This is East Africa. You see the route of spread and the spread across the world. And somewhere in the Middle East, they interbreed, which when they have left Africa, when they are dispersing, read this book too. If you see this book, please get this book and read The Great Human Diaspora. Very thorough, very researched book, very nice. Who are the Luigi Luca and Francisco Cavalli. Buy this book and read his updates, his modern in terms of human anthropological studies, paleontological studies. So read this book. It's very good. I think I have another one called, I have multiple books on anthropology, but these are the ones I have right now in my table. So read this book again, Bones, Stones, and Molecules. Bones, Stones, and Molecules, Out of Africa and Human Origin, right? So for some of you guys who are pastors and priests, church going, tongue speaking, Bible carrying, hand clapping, um, you think that God created mankind or humanity in somewhere in the Middle East. There's no evidence to that. There's no. We don't believe that bullshit. It's been you've been conned. You've been conned, and they use fear to induce you, to bully you, to believe in a piece of crap as authentic history of mankind, right? So if we go again by monogenetic theory, although some Europeans are proposing polygenesis or polygenetic theory. Monogenetic theory has to do with like humanity originated from one genetic stock, right? That is monogenetic theory of human origin. And Europeans, because they don't want to believe that humanity came from Africa, they began to also propose other theories called the um, polygenesis or polygenetic theory of human evolution, saying no, really, not really, that humanity were created from different continents at different times. That's what they're trying to propose, because they don't just want to accept that everybody came from Africa. They don't want to believe that, because for them is demeaning, because they put Africa down for years. So in if Africans came from this East Africa, then the Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, who are black people, must have been right when they wrote in the papyrus of Honefa that we came from the foothill of the mountain of the moon where the god Hapi dwells or lives. They're talking of East Africa, right? The origin, Shint, a cake, is like the maker of anthropological findings and paleontological findings and genetic studies, right? Like the maker. That's where, if you're an anthropologist, if you haven't gone to East Africa, Ethiopia, and the other part of East Africa to do your study, like people wondering, what are you studying then? What are you studying? So humanity originated from here. So original pure Africans did not mix with, because there were no Neanderthals here from what these Europeans is not Africans saying this, because if Africans do that first, you're going to say is Afrocentric. They are practicing Afrocentric. And isn't that funny that when Europeans propose any theory, it is science. If you do your own design, is considered Afrocentric. That's bully. That's academic bully, intellectual bully. That's monopoly, right? You're playing the monopoly game. You want your idea. If you have your idea, I have my idea. Your idea is universal. Mine is selfish and personal. You see, it's colonization. Colonization continues in the field of academia as well. That's why these African people who claim to be PhD, and they are still bound themselves, confined themselves with the notion of peer review. Peer review is a method of control. I mean, can't you guys don't get it? You happy you publish your whatever in peer review. It means that a group of elites, mostly secret societies, came and gathered together and created a parameter in which they determine what is true and what is not true. So if you publish things that the establishment don't want to hear, the peer review will decline it. So it's a method of control. And if you see the history of um, um, how this control mechanism were put in place before, you see that it was purely meant to regulate knowledge and to make sure that what the mainstream elite people don't want will not be published, right? So great human dispersal out of Africa through the Strait of Gibraltar. This is a strait or a channel linking the Mediterranean Sea with the Atlantic Ocean. It is between the southern Spain in Europe and the northern Morocco in Africa. So what this means is that humanity originated here and then eventually over evolutionary process, thousands and millions of years begin to, you see, this strait called the Strait of Gibraltar, this is southern France and then northern Morocco. They crossed here, you see, this is Africa. So humanity crossed here to the Middle East, to Europe, and spread all over the world, all over the world, spread all over the world from Africa. See the route of migration. And somebody is telling you that somewhere in the Middle East, God created in the Garden of Eden. I mean, you guys are Africans. You guys make me sick with your religious stupidity. You know, that's why sometimes just leave the Bible alone and then study other things. Because there are materials that could free your mind which you don't know. Humanity doesn't, there's no place called Garden of Eden where humanity came. Europeans themselves are trying to free you, but you don't even get it. They tell you that a black woman is the mother of all humanity. That's why they call her um, um, mitochondria. They talk about the mitochondria DNA or the mitochondrial Eve, not Garden of Eden Eve. That one is a fabrication. That one is a mythology. And Bible is full of mythical, right? Is a mythological, is an astro theological writings. It's an astrology-based writings, right? For example, when they talk about the Samson and Delilah, he's not talking of people, Africans. He's talking of solar activities. He's talking of the stars. Samson is Shamash. Shamash is the sun. Delilah is Venus. He's talking of astrological events and not people, not at all. They don't believe there's a man named Samson. None. It's a code. Anyway, again, in this book, I mean, in the journal, the scientists, again, they too are coming to the reality. I'm going to read this. A few hundred millennia later, about 60,000 to 70,000 years, the ancestors of modern non-Africans, everybody's telling you non-Africans, followed a similar path out of Africa, showed you the path, and began interbreeding with these other hominin groups. Excuse me. They're telling you that when human beings dispersed out of Africa, they went across Eurasia, and there they begin to interbreed, mix, have sex, copulate with Neanderthals, and then that's how modern Europeans and Asians and every other person except Africans have monkey gene, right? Researchers estimate that much of the Neanderthal DNA in modern human genomes came from interbreeding events that took place around 50,000 to 55,000 years ago in the Middle East. Thousands of years later, humans moving into East Asia interbreeded with Denisovans, right? You see, they're all telling you. That's why you have to study. Because if you don't study, if you don't open your mind to knowledge, you will be enslaved. You'll be enslaved by ideological construct based on lies and fabrications, right? Again, the article published on the is a magazine journal. You see a draft sequence of the Neanderthal DNA. See, all these people did research. These are top scholars, European scholars, right? What did they say here? Find this and read. You see, his article published in 2010. See, volume 328. Find it and try to study it. Some of you, you have phone, but then you don't use it. You use it to just gossip on Facebook. pathetic. So we show that Neanderthals shared more genetic variants with present-day humans in Eurasia than with present-day humans in sub-Saharan Africa. You see, they're all telling you one thing. So don't allow people to be calling you monkeys and apes, okay? Because you're not. So again, we see that physical anthropology in the 17th, 18th, and early 19th century was full of racist bullshit, comparing Africans again with monkeys using something called philology or physiological studies, right? They observe people and just so black people just look like monkeys, and they are monkeys. They came from monkeys, right? And these are the kind of things taught in higher institutional learnings, 17th, 18th, and early 19th century that passed for science. And that is why some of you who are scholars, quote unquote, if you're African, you call yourself a scholar, have to be careful by just embracing some of these things you call scientific. Scientific. Sometimes you got to be a renegade, you have to be a rebel researcher. And to be that, sometimes be willing to not be validated by the mainstream system. Because could you imagine people who were studying this in those days saw it as science? Now, thank God for DNA sequencing. That is the peak of science, DNA. You can't cheat it. Show us the DNA. Let's see who came from who is true human and who is part human and part monkey, right? Okay. So European scholars, especially during the 17th, 18th, and early 19th century, did everything in their power to justify that blacks were inferior race of people genetically, physiologically, intellectually, and morally. You see, who are some of these people? I'm giving you materials to go and do your further research, because these are like vast compendium of information, and you cannot just present all of them like within an hour. This is just like a pen drop here and there for you to know these names and go and research more and see what these people think about you and how they shaped the mind of people around the world to begin to see you as monkeys and as subhumans, right? Another pseudo studies by this guy called Paul Broca. Paul Broca, he came out with something he called a table chromatic, right? See, these are his formula to identify people by eye color, by skin color, and then determine who is superior and who is inferior. It wasn't science. It wasn't really science, right? It was just bias and racism. But maybe in those days they thought it was science because they are dancing to the tune of the existing racial mental construct of the time, right? So he was a French surgeon, physician, anatomist, and anthropologist known for his research work on the human brain. So this guy was like in the top. He was the founder of Anthropological Society in Paris. His general contribution to physical anthropology was well recognized in the Western academia. Broca created series of measurement um, devices known as craniometer, uh, um, goniometer, and micrometer, which he used to validate that the whites are superior as a race of people. During the mid 1800, he developed color scheme to measure racial differences in skin color, eye color, and hair texture. These tools were seen as revolutionary at the time. It was usually used as a self-fulfilling prophecy of European racist mindset of superiority. Black people, of course, were seen as being at the bottom of the human evolutionary, at the bottom of evolutionary stage of humanity, right? So these are some of the craniometers, craniometrical devices they invented in those days to measure people's skull and see who has the bigger skull, who has the smaller skull, and they believe black people have smaller skull, therefore that's why they are inferior, and that's why they are closer to chimpanzees and baboons, because these other baboons and chimpanzees have a smaller um, um, crane, brain, right? So this guy again, one of my favorites, destroying the craniometrics, craniometrics, can't say this word, craniometricist racism, destroy them. Look at what he said in this book again that I show you. I have my copy here on my table. He said the cranial capacity of a number of Paleolithic Neanderthal man was on the average 1,625 cc. What an extraordinary situation. Primitive Neanderthal man who lived more than 50,000 years ago had a longer brain than the average white man of today, right? Stranger that this elementary fact has been so consistently overlooked. Are we to assume then that these Neanderthal men were culturally and intellectually superior to the average modern white man? The Negro has an average cranial capacity of 1,400 cubic centimeter. That is 50 cc less than the white, whereas the modern white has a cranial capacity which is lower than those of these Neanderthal men by 200 cubic centimeters. Are we to draw the conclusion from these facts then that the modern white is intellectually as much inferior to Neanderthal man as the Negro is to the white man? We believe not. So what he's trying to say is that he was trying to, those people who measure cranial capacities, the bigness, they measure how big the brain, the skull is, or the brain is, and conclude from such studies that black people have smaller head than white people, then therefore white people are more intellectually, morally, culturally superior. But he's arguing that if you check monkey called Neanderthal, that his brain capacity is bigger than that of white people. And he's arguing, if we follow your racist argument, are we going to conclude that these monkeys are more superior technologically, intellectually to the white people, as white people have used such studies to justify the inferiority of black people? You see, that is, I said, this guy is he's funny the way he writes. He's cynical, but he's very intelligent the way he writes. So he just destroyed the cranial capacity argument as to the inferiority of black man, right? We see other pseudo studies, like from James Redfield. He wrote a book called Comparative Physiognomy, trying to show you the history of what they call scientific racism in the European history, right? He published this in 1852. You see, he began to draw comparisons of, say, black people. This, of course, this is Negro. Their lips is like fish. So these are the kind of things that promoted certain racist predispositions that we still inherit today. Another guy you should be aware of is Samuel George Morton, another cranometrist, right? See, studying the brain capacity, trying to see who is closer to monkey. And of course, black people have small head and small brain. Therefore, they came from monkey. They came from monkey. Unfortunately, if these people were to come back to life now, they'll be shocked that black people are free from monkey gene, right? That in fact, modern Europeans and Asians carry Neanderthal DNA and not black people. So, as I say, I'm just kind of showing these people, the people who like to do further research. These are some of your racists in academic history of the world who shaped the mind of certain some of the European academic institutions um, in its racist outlook on the world. Remember, these are intellectuals who were teaching people. They were teaching other people. Could you imagine if these kind of people were the ones who are teaching children and teaching college graduates and other, people who are doing advanced studies, right? See how they corrupt their minds. Another guy to be aware of is Robert Chambers, right? He wrote a book or a treatise titled Vestiges of Natural History of Creation, right? This is the book. If you find this old book, try to read it and just see the silliness of their quote unquote studies, which in those days was revolutionary science. Now today is a junk. He said, we have already seen that various leading animal forms represent stages in the embryonic progress of the highest. The human being, right? Our brain goes through the various stages of fishes, reptiles, a mammal's brain, and finally becomes human. After completing the animal transformation, it passes through the characters in which it appears in the Negro, Malay, American, Mongolian nations, and finally the Caucasian. What, of course, is talking like a Darwinian evolutionist, and maybe he might be talking like somebody who, like, into that evolutionary theory. He's trying to say that humanity evolved from fish, from reptiles, and then they graduate, but then the peak, the final evolved of this process is the Caucasian, which means the Caucasian or the white man is at the apex of the human evolution, is the finality, is the refined, and every other person, the Negro is at the bottom, and then followed by these other races of people. Again, this is book. Try to find his book and read it, right? You see, Chambers also concluded in the publication that Africans are genetically and intellectually regressive and inferior. According to him, Caucasians possess superior gene and intellect. The Caucasian is therefore fully developed human in the evolutionary process of man. He indicated that in the Caucasian or Indo-European family alone has the primitive organization been improved upon. The Mongolian, Malay, American, and Negro comprehending perhaps 5/6 of mankind are degenerates. He called you degenerates. So the white man is the most strongest, is the most mentally alert, physically built, that looks like a Hitler's Aryan philosophy. So these other people are degenerates, right? Again, the monkey man. We come to the monkey man. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, again, proposed a theory of evolution in his book On the Origin of Species. He wrote in 1859. He again was one of those kind of racist, not just racist, but like his theory became to this day some of the basis for the most atrocious evil against indigenous or black people around the world. So if you see this book, I got it here, read this book, The Darwin Effect. The Darwin Effect. You're going to see eugenics, racism, communism, sexism, Nazism came out of Charles Darwin's proposed theory of evolution and how man came. They say man evolved from monkey. Thank God, not all men evolved from. Has a monkey in them. Maybe he was talking about himself because he's the one who has a Neanderthal DNA in him, not black people, right? Black people did not evolve from monkey. Black people are true humans, fully humans, right? So in 1859, Charles Darwin, an English naturalist, published his work on the origin of species. This work was a global phenomenon. Darwin's unique work will set the stage for extreme materialism in science. It became one of the bedrocks with which racists and eugenists used to promote subjugation and elimination of people they deemed racially impure or inferior. That's what I said. And this book really spoke well about that. I have other books talking about linking Charles Darwin to all kinds of atrocities on the planet. And we have to understand that Charles Darwin probably was in the secret society. I think Erasmus Darwin, I think his grandfather, who was, of course, we know he was in the Lunar Society. The Lunar Society was one of these hermetic, Platonic secret societies where they gather in their lodges and then determine what they're going to be teaching humanity. And you say that Darwinism, Darwin's theory became up to today one of the most well spread teachings across the world, replacing what they call creationism today. So they're fighting with creationists, are fighting with Darwinists in terms of who controls the minds of students. That's why I say that you have to get away from these school systems and find your own, educate yourself, because nobody will educate you. So Darwin wrote in The Descent of Man, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of men will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. He told you that. He told you that the civilized race is white people. You know, they will eventually exterminate you. That's why you have to read what these people are saying. You have to know what they are talking about. You have to know, enter your mind, because by entering your mind, it will help you to stay safe. You know, don't be naive, right? In chapter 5 and 6 of his satanic publication, Darwin proposed the extermination of indigenous people as a natural biological process of survival of the fittest. Another guy you have to watch carefully, of course, he's been dead a long time ago, is Francis Galton, Hereditary Genius. Read this book. Find this book. I'm giving you material. I'm giving you scholarly material to go and read. Hereditary Genius. Galton was an English scholar, anthropologist, sociologist, physiologist, tropical explorer, geographer, geneticist, psychometrician, a eugenicist, a social Darwinism, and a racist. Look at what he said about black people. Just watch. He described Black people as so childish, stupid, and simpleton-like. The average intellectual standard of the Negro race is some 2 grades below our own. You're below them, right? The conscience of a Negro is aghast at his own wild, impulsive nature and is easily stirred by a preacher. You see, you people who like to go to church and listen to clowns tell you what to do. He said, Black people are easily stirred by a preacher. Whenever I hear a preacher start shouting hallelujah, jumping, these people studied you a long time ago. They studied you a long time ago. They know you. That's what this intellectual was saying. It's funny. It's very funny. Black people are stirred by a preacher. When the preacher starts hollering and shouting and speaking in tongues, say you are easily stirred by that. Is it not true? Yeah, to some extent you do. Even back in the mother continent and also in diaspora. See, Black people, once they get into church, they lose their mind, not knowing that. Remember, these are the time during the period of colonization. These are the people who brought Christianity to you. You don't know they use it to wire your head, right? He also called Black people half-witted. Read this book; is very interesting. You have to see how people see you. That will help you to live. That's something my dad taught me when I was 14 years old. When I was learning to drive motorcycle, you say you have to drive your own and you drive other people. You have to be in your head and be in other people's head, right? That's how you stay safe, right? So Darwin's evolutionary theory presumed that Africans are closer to ape than Europeans. See, which is a lie. Although many European scholars now disprove this assumption, we must remember that this theory was at one time taught and accepted by leading scholars and academic institutions. So, no, Black people did not come from ape or we did not mix with ape. We're humans, true, pure, original creation, pure blood of the gods, right? True blood of the gods. So we're not mixed with any lower hominid anywhere. So when Darwin was writing this, genetic science wasn't there. So he concocted his secret society, Masonic evil theory, proposed his evil theory, but now he know that he is the one who has monkey gene. In fact, he's the monkey man. He's the monkey man, not Black people. He said through his evolutionary studies that Black people are closer to apes, but we are not. We are not, because we have now known that any other group of humans in humanity outside Africa carry the DNA of monkey. Black people don't. Another guy you have to watch to some of those racist scholars who shaped the minds of the European scholarship. Another guy is Carl Linnaeus. Carl Linnaeus. He was a Swedish naturalist with interest in botany, zoology, and zoology. He has been called a father of taxonomy. Taxonomy is like naming different, like identifying different plants and animals by name and stuff like that. His published work is titled Systema Naturae, which focused on race. He described Black people as lazy, flat nose, swollen lips, sly, sluggish, and neglectful. Where are you not still hear people say that Black people are lazy up to today? You see, there are systems that shaped people's mind when they see, and this system is highly ingrained within the scholastic culture, within the cultural matrix of Europe and America, And again, as we're seeing now, Asians as well. So they call Black people lazy. These are what scholars who run high institutions of learning were describing. And I always say, if Black people are lazy, why did they carry Black people to work as slaves? No, you don't carry lazy people to work as slaves. You carry hardworking people as slaves. Have you ever seen a slave who just wake up in the morning, in the morning, and say, "I'm lazy today. I'm not going to go to work. I'm just lazy. I'm going to lay down." And, no, Black people are not lazy. It's the system that represses them, right? So read this old book if you can find it. Have a collection of it. So teach yourself and your children the truth about the history of the world and why Black people are hated around the world, right? So again, this Italian mafia. It's not a mafia. Caesar Lombroso was an Italian phrenologist, physician, and criminologist. He was also a Darwinian evolutionary theorist. In 1887, he published a book called The Criminal Man, in which he postulated his theory of criminal atavism. He concluded that there is a biophysiological and genetic basis for criminality. At the time, the Western mind filled with racist predilections. This book reinforced systemic racism, social Darwinism, and a general perception of black race as genetically and morally inferior. Don't mind my grammatical mistake here. I write this for my visual stimulation. Okay, I'm just giving you material to go and research. So this man proposed, it was Italian scholar who wrote a book called The Criminal Mind, and then he just made stuff up because it's not scientific, and say that certain physiological, biological look might indicate that somebody has a criminal behavior, and that these things were taught in major universities and shaped people's mind. And again, if come to think about it today, Black people are still seen as criminals and thugs and idiots. So um, the system that shaped people's mind to view Black people here is systemic and is long. It's like it has a long history. That's why you have to read stuff like this to know what people say about you, right? Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote the Tarzan of the Apes. These are literatures. These have been turned into classic movies, right? Is one of the um, writers. Is an American writer whose work, was well known around the world. But then look at what he said about people in the Tarzan of the Apes. Remember, Tarzan is the white man of the ape. I think he's trying to subliminally trying to say black man, a white man, king of the apes, king of Africans. So, because white man went to Africa and was just whooping the ass of all apes in Africa. In Africa, I think is a metaphor because at that time, colonization was going on and white man was whipping the ass of a black man at that time. This is what he said about black people. Their yellow teeth were filled, filed to sharp points, and their great protruding lips added still further to the low and bestial brutishness of their appearance. Bestial, animalistic, crude, barbarian, uncivilized. That's what he wrote, you know. Again, we see movies in the Western, we see Western movies, King Kong movie. This movie is classic. Many people don't know that at the time of this movie was produced, about a group of 9 young, innocent black men were accused in Alabama of raping a white women, and they were standing trial. And in those days, as it is up to now, to some extent, Black people are seen as savages and beasts who are just there to ravage. So this whole idea of King Kong is subliminally related to these Black people, blackness, Black people loving white woman. You see, the ape, the big ape. Remember, they're talking about you guys. They're talking about you. See, it's holding the white woman. Always, this ape is always like almost like infatuated with white woman. The savages, Black people here. This ape holding white woman. This is a classic movie. If you see this movie, try to watch it and see the subliminal suggestion. And the time that this movie came up was the time of the trial of 9 Black women accused of raping white woman in Alabama. See, even in this modern time, Hollywood, Babylon, Hollywood continues to replicate this movie. See, the ape looking at fragile white woman. See, again, huge, mountainous, gigantic ape holding the white woman, kind of affection, kind of. That's how they say Black people always are looking forward to ravaging, having sex with white women. It's kind of those biases that has been always been there for a long time. See, in pop cultures, see this drawing to have this basketball player to pose. Just compare this picture. You see that they still interpreting Black people as monkeys and apes. This picture I think was there in the World War II. So it destroyed this mad brute, and then just look at the exact picture taken recently, where they make this basketball. They probably pay him money. Probably he was ignorant. He didn't know the history of those kind of things. Grabbing fragile white woman and crying like a big ape, right? That's how they see you. Again, the Planet of the Apes. The Planet of the Apes is a subliminal suggestion. Again, subliminal suggestion. Planet of the Apes. That is a country full of apes, or a continent full of apes, or a society full of apes. Right? Watch this classic movie. It's also a subliminal suggestion, because whenever they are talking of apes, they are talking about Negroes, right? Right. So in the Journal of American Historian, this is what somebody wrote. Find the article called Return of the Apes. They said, in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which was produced in 1972, the lead ape sounds much like Malcolm X, speaking of the need for apes to start a revolution in which they will take power in a rebellion against humanity. As the film scholar Eric Green observed, the apes uprising in the film looked strikingly similar to the urban riot of the late 1960s in Watts, Detroit, and Newark. You see? So when they are making this movie, the subliminal, you guys got to get into the study of mind conditioning, predictive programming. These are systems that the CIA and other media agencies in the Western society use to condition the people's mind to even hate you without knowing that they're hating you, right? So this Planet of the Apes, all these ape movies coming, of course, they're talking of Negroids, Black people. But again, you are not the ape. You're not the ape because you don't have a Neanderthal gene. So not all European scholars in the 17th, 18th, 19th century were racist. Some, like this guy, Johann Friedrich Blumenbeck, is one of the good guys. Look at his book on the natural varieties of mankind. It's an age-old book. If you find this book, have a collection of it for some of you who like to do further research, right? So he was a good guy. He was a good guy at that point when most of his colleagues were racist. This guy was way ahead of his time in terms of understanding humanity, right? In terms of understanding humanity. Again, this gentleman again was another European, Alexander von Humboldt, right? Look at his quote here. He said, while we maintain the unity of the human species, we at the same time repel the depressing assumption of superior and inferior races of man. He was seen as one of those who really begin, who was at the background of destroying the racial academic scholarship that was going on, racist academic scholarship that was going on at that during those period. So I've been talking for a while. I think it's coming to an end. Black people need to remove their minds from these two books. You know, if you say this to a Muslim, you probably chop off your head. And if you say this to a Christian, you probably get upset. The reason he wouldn't kill you is because probably the religion doesn't promote killing people, because if they do, they will kill you. But these two books are not your book. Even if they are books, you don't know how to read them. And they subject you on your knees and on chains because you are praying, waiting for a sky daddy to come and save you. You are waiting for a sky daddy. Sky daddy. No one is coming to save you, Africans. Nobody, no God will come to save you. You are the God you'll be waiting for. And because you don't get this, you have not understood this, you keep praying and going to crusade and going to Ramadan and going to Mecca, going to Rome, thinking that there is somebody who is coming from the sky, jump down from the sky and with lightning and power and save you. If you talk to Africans, even PhD people, the so-called educated people, also, oh, God will take care of it. That's it. Very childish. Oh, God will help us. So God will help us. God is going to help us. That's it. No God is coming. No God will redeem your continent unless you rise up. You are getting out of the European, American, Arab slavery, and very soon you're going to be a slave of the Chinese digital universe, right? And I'm done talking. This is the primordial wave, and I've come to the end of this talk. So, I have this book. Get this book for people who want to do further research. The 10,000 year explosion, talking of the human origin. And again, the Neanderthal. I have multiple books on Neanderthal, but this is the one on my table right now. The Neanderthal, James Shreve. Buy it to understand what the Neanderthal, the monkeys that Europeans and Asians interbred with and that infected their genetic makeup with the Neanderthal DNA. All right. I am a Wisdomizer, and this is the primordial wave. I'll see you next time.